Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one, we have some interesting news about some potentially upcoming changes regarding Mantis and maybe a few other cards. So this was a question that was asked on the Discord, I think just today or yesterday, I guess, by the time this goes live. And it's about some of the cards that got changed a few patches ago, namely things like Mantis and Cable. So they're saying, hey Glenn, a few months ago, we nerfed almost all the cards that give you a card in your hand because Loki was too good. This included Cable, Mantis, and even Snowguard. After Loki has settled down, how does the team feel about Mantis and Cable being one more cost than before? And have you considered anything about reverting them? And Glenn's reply here, those changes weren't about Loki. We were aiming to better distribute a host of similar effects to help them all see more appropriate play. Snowguard just was also especially strong in Loki. Neither Mantis nor Cable were being played often in that deck or any deck. Other than Mantis and Cable, we were happy with the results, and we have something already planned for them in a future patch. So, where did the leaks come into this? Well, if you were paying attention when we got the update with the power couples earlier this week, some players noticed that some text in the game wasn't actually matching up with card functionality. And one of those texts was Mantis. So normally Mantis reads, if your opponent played a card here this turn, you draw a card from their deck. But surprisingly, this had some pretty different text, even though the actual function of the card hadn't changed. So the new text was, on reveal, if your opponent played any cards here this turn, you can copy one of them into your hand. Now, I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of wrote this off as, maybe this is something they were testing, and I wasn't even really going to cover this because they patched it out pretty quickly, and it could have very simply been an error where, maybe they were testing this and it wasn't something that was actually meant to go live, because that's something that can happen. However, with this response, now that it's clear Cable and Mantis are going to be changed, I think it seems a lot more likely that this Mantis change is actually going to make its way into the game, and we got a little sneak peek at it before it was really set to go live. And this definitely seems like a change they would make in a patch instead of an OTA, since this isn't really a balance-focused change, just trying to maybe make the card a bit better. Does it actually make Mantis better? In my opinion, no. I think this actually makes Mantis a worse card. I think if they wanted to go for something like this, at the very least, it should have had Mantis copy all the cards. I don't think that would have been too crazy. Mantis doesn't really see any play as is. And now you're kind of flipping a coin here. If your opponent plays multiple cards and you want one of them, well, you've got to deal with the RNG outcome, which isn't really great. And also, one of the powerful things about Mantis, even though it wasn't really good enough for her to see play, was you take that card away from your opponent, where even if you aren't using it, sometimes you got value out of that because you knew maybe you didn't have to play around that card anymore. Or maybe it was a key card for your opponent's strategy and you knew they didn't have it. Let's say you take Loki from a Loki deck or Null from a Destroy deck. Like, you could then snap on that knowing that, hey, I have this card and my opponent can't get it, and they probably don't know that. So I think the old version of Mantis is better, which is kind of unfortunate, but I guess we'll see what happens with this one. Mantis was not the only card that had some leaked text slip on through here. So we're going to take a look at the rest of those real quickly. The next one we have here is Miek. So Miek reads, when you discard a card, this gains +1 power and can move next turn. This is notably different than current Miek, where he still gains +1 power for each discarded card, but he is guaranteed to move and you have no control over that movement. This would be a pretty welcome buff to Miek. I do think one of the bigger downsides of this card is you can't really control where your power output is landing, or maybe you want to keep discarding for your deck, but you want Miek to stay where he is, and that would kind of fix this entirely, where you can choose to move Miek if the ability is available, but you could also choose to just leave him where he is if that's where you want him to be. So I would very much welcome this because Miek has been kind of underwhelming. We have some upcoming discard support coming to hopefully help out that archetype, but I think especially base discard has really been hurting ever since the Chavez change. So something like this that could give them a little bit more control over their power would very much be a welcome addition. And the last major one here we have is Yondu. So Yondu had the text, destroy the lowest cost card in your opponent's deck. And a lot of people saw this one and were like, what's going on here? This seems like a nerf, and Yondu's already not seeing any play. So why are they nerfing Yondu? And I think the reason they might be going through with this change is because of a future season pass card. Now, Baron Zemo was a data mine we got with the last patch. This is looking like it's going to be the season pass card for the month of April. Obviously, it could go through some changes between now and then, but for the time being, it is a 4/6 that reads on reveal, add the lowest cost card from your opponent's deck here on your side. So Yondu would definitely make sense as a change here if they're trying to make it so, hey, Zemo gets a little bit of support. Yondu can destroy the lowest cost card in their deck, so hopefully you get a even higher cost card from your Baron Zemo trigger. Now, presently, I don't think that would be enough to make Yondu and Baron Zemo a deck, but there is quite a bit of time between now and when these cards release. Baron Zemo could change, other cards could change, things could get buffed, things could get nerfed, so who knows. Yondu, even though I think in other decks this is probably a nerf to him, no deck really plays Yondu. I think the only deck that really played Yondu were like budget Cerebro 2 lists or maybe a budget Pool 2 Destroy. So you're not really missing out too much on that with this change. I really haven't seen any decks making use of the effect greatly, but it's something to be aware of. I don't think this change is necessarily going to come soon. I think the change here kind of makes sense if they're trying to make Yondu have a bit of a home in a Zemo style deck when he eventually joins the game in April. And then one more thing worth mentioning was Luke Cage had his old text where he was only hitting one lane. I don't think that is indicative of a future change. I think maybe some wires got crossed and it was just a visual error because that used to be his old text. They changed him back to being a global effect. And I think it'd be pretty surprising if they ended up reverting him back to a single lane, since that experiment was viewed as kind of a failure at a 2-3 stat line. But yeah, that is all the information we have about some potential leaks for cards that might be changing. Overall, nothing too impactful. I do think the Mantis thing is a little bit unfortunate. At least with Yondu, it kind of makes sense what they're going for here with trying to support this other card. But with Mantis, I really can't figure out any way that card is actually better because, you know, the old Mantis actually did have a bit of a benefit, even if you couldn't make use of the card from your opponent's deck, whereas this new one, not so much. So it's kind of a bummer. It's really weird to me when they change these early pool cards multiple times and they still end up kind of unplayable. But maybe eventually they'll get to a place where it is a bit better than it is now. And we don't know anything about Cable. Cable is probably going to change in some way too. So here's hoping that change is better than the Mantis one. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.